Hi, my name's Phil, and this is my friend Stew. And we're just going to be talking about faith and trials. Faith in and through the trials we go through, and even our faith growing through the trials. And Stew, I know that you've been through some trials recently. I just wanted to ask you about your recent experiences. We'll see where this goes.
Okay. So I think this goes back to May last year, when things for me, sort of health-wise, I noticed something wasn't quite right in the bowel region, but maybe like a typical guy, I sort of put it down to something else and what have you. And so got into June, and then suddenly I got a phone call from my sister saying my dad had suddenly died. So first of all, I had this instant shock for what was going on with my dad dying, and then I went to we went through all the procedure of sort of sorting that out and having to prepare for a funeral and grieve and such like. And in the background, I'm still sort of know something's not quite right. I went for some tests. They did notice there was something they'd seen on my bowel. In the meantime, I'm still going ahead with preparing for my dad's funeral. And then a week after my dad's funeral, I got a diagnosis that actually I got bowel cancer, and they'd found a 15 centimetre tumour on my bowel, but it hadn't spread. That was the good news. But all the same, then we're into not just a trial for myself, but for the whole family. And it wasn't just a physical trial for me; it was an emotional trial as well. So we knew that, but right from the diagnosis, the moment I was told, I chose instantly to believe, no, we're not having this, God, we're doing this, we're getting rid of this, which shocked the doctor at the time. He didn't know what to say, but
you told the doctor
I
this?
said, look, we're not having this. God's going to do this, and he said, okay. So that was it. So the first thing is that my knee-jerk reaction was to know that God was in this, and He was going to, this was not His plan.
But I think I'm right in saying that God also showed you other things you could do. He introduced you to some helpful remedies in addition to what the wonderful NHS were offering you.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. So right from the moment you kind of get that diagnosis, you're lots of advice out there, lots of good stuff out there, and etc. So I did quite a bit of research, and others did on my behalf, and I then came up with what I felt was a right plan for me from sort of the natural remedies, to work alongside what was then going to be a schedule of chemotherapy and radiotherapy.
Yeah, and this all takes months, doesn't it? Lots of travel to the hospital, lots of radiotherapy, chemotherapy.
Yeah, 25
MRIs.
Yeah. So you're on a schedule of 25 days in a row. Well, weekdays of travel to Oxford for radiotherapy, and then taking chemotherapy tablets alongside that. So there's a lot going on, and then I chose to take a supplement route of various things alongside that at the same time.
Because at the beginning you said, I chose to trust God. I said, God's going to do this. Where did all that come from? What made you so convinced?
I think that what you don't realise, maybe sometimes you need to look at this more. You need to look at your bank balance with God more closely than perhaps you realise. Is that what you realise is that there's that over many years of of walking with God, and you you don't realise there's a lot in the bank to draw on, that maybe you don't realise at the time, but when it comes to it, there is a lot of God's put in a lot of trust and a lot of faith that He's already put in there for you to access. But you didn't, maybe you've not been using the right PIN number, and when you do, you realise, okay, there is more in. He's totally there with you, and yeah, I guess that's the choice.
So you had all this treatment,
Yeah.
month by month. You came to the point of surgery.
Yeah. So
what happened?
So, I had the treatment, as you say. I then went to once the treatment ended, sort of early October. You have to then wait for a while before they rescan you. I got rescanned in November, and then surgery was 12th of December. And the plan was that they were going to. The plan is that the radiotherapy shrinks the tumour in order for them to operate, and then the surgery was to take it out.
Okay, wow. So during all this long process, you weren't able to go to work, and there was a lot of waiting. What was happening to your, if you like, your faith levels, that bank balance you talked about? What was happening? What was going on for you?
Well, a couple of things that happened. In terms of the work situation, God had already seemed to have worked out the best plan for that, because I'm self-employed, but the company that I do a lot of work for decided they wanted to do something for me, so they took me on as an employee, so they could still pay me when I wasn't there.
That's amazing.
So that felt an amazing blessing. So that then eliminated quite a lot of practical worry. All the time that I going through the waiting, as you say, and waiting to the next appointment and the what ifs, etc. There was a strength that got there that I knew this was going to be a positive outcome. My God gave me a really positive mindset through the whole thing, and continues to do so. So, if it's like in your gravest hour, don't want to over dramatize it, but he gave me all the strength I needed, or he gave me the ability to access the strength that he'd already put there.
Yes, and that's the choice you talked about, isn't it? Because as we know, Scripture says He has given us, in His divine wisdom, He has given us everything we need for life and godliness, and it's a great verse. But actually accessing, as you say, and exercising, He's given us all the faith we need. His Spirit in you is full of faith. Yeah. Are you going to exercise that faith, or are we going to let the seeds of unbelief grow when we look at the situation and we look at and we sense the feelings and we look at the statistics? Or what are we going to stand on?
Yeah, there was a time in one of I think it was the first or second night after my surgery. So I'm lying there, sort of pipes and tubes coming out here, there, and everywhere. And the middle of the night, the hospital is so noisy, sleep is difficult, and you're sore, quite a lot of pain. And I really, I had a couple of worship songs that I was just playing on repeat, because literally, that was all I had. I had God to just comfort me. Yeah. That's all I had, and I remember feeling, I wouldn't say desperate, but just sort of, I guess I was a little bit desperate, saying, what this, all my comforts in terms of my earthly comforts have been stripped away, and I had, I was struggling to sleep, and all I had was Him singing over me, if you like. Yeah. And that taught me, taught me a lot about where I'd almost missed. I don't want to say got it wrong, but in a sense that I hadn't had that. I hadn't been ever reduced to that place before.
Right.
But it's not a place I'll ever forget now.
Yeah.
And want to learn from and not sort of make sure that I'm not relying on earthly comforts, if you like.
Because we don't choose the trials, we don't want them, our soul shrinks from them. But as you read scripture, there's so many heroes of faith, and you see their growth through the trials. When who else can I turn to? Who else have I got? But what's happened recently? Because you've had a few results through now.
Yeah.
I know, it's not the end. But it's coming to the end of this season of trial. What's been the results?
Okay, so having had in the last so many days my first post-operation meeting with the surgeon, which is where traditionally you go and find out the report from the lab, what they cut out, what they analysed, what stage of cancer you're actually at. Well, when they came to analyse what they cut out in the lab, there wasn't any tumour to analyse.
Wow.
And all they found was scar.
Wow.
And it was. I think Debs and I are a little bit still in shock. Really, we're not quite sure. We're still in that sort of what happened kind of thinking.
Where did that go?
But what I realise is that God has worked a miracle here. And not just in the physical, but He's given the family, including Tom and Abby, a peace that really a lot of people wouldn't have in their position.
Yeah. And He actually did all this now based on what He did 2,000 years ago.
Well, exactly.
He's just taken us back to His great plan.
Yeah, exactly right. And one of the things that I sort of, having had 12 nights and days in hospital with literally camped in the same room, with in times not a very peaceful environment. There's a lot going on. God just spoke to me about kindness and thankfulness, and I had a lot of time to just with my own thoughts around that, and that was precious.
You said something about thankfulness as an emotion recently. Can you remember what that comment is?
The comment was, I think I said that, and I can't quote who it's from, but thankfulness is the least spent human emotion.
That's it. Yeah.
And it made me realise is that our focus can so easily be on when the things aren't going well, and the trials, if you like, and the disappointments and the despair, and like many people who might be watching this now, we've all, including myself, including you, we've all got our trials and despairs and disappointments. But what I'm beginning to learn, and maybe a little bit, late to the party, is that thankfulness and bitterness can't exist in the same space. That's my belief. When you become thankful, it takes your thinking and your mind to a place of God where bitterness begins to evaporate.
Amen. Well, thanks very much, Stu. We're really thankful to you and to God.
Yeah, and the journey continues, and my journey is I'm probably going to have some mop-up chemo. Yeah. That then will be a continuation